Finbar, hello, how are you?
Hey, how are you, Kevin?
Doing fantastic. I just can't tell you how thrilled I am to get to talk to you today. Just looking at all the equipment behind, all the things I've ever wanted to own in my own life as a musician, my goodness, all in one place. And, wow, I
It's
can't
a
believe
little experimental lab that I have going down here.
so awesome, so awesome.
Yeah.
Um, I just want to take a minute to introduce our future audience to you and so they know a little bit about what you're doing. I'm beyond excited to have the opportunity to spend some time this afternoon talking to Finbar O'Hanlon today. As a foundation to everything that he does in music, he's an amazing guitarist and composer. He has a love for the art of music, and it's something so much more than just the background that we tend to have turned it into from place to place as we wander. We have music everywhere, but are we listening to it? Are we listening to it? And that's his challenge to us. Are we listening to the music? Are we digging in deep? Always pushing beyond the parameters that are commonly established in music to demonstrate that there aren't any boundaries in music. There are not any boundaries, endless combinations. And it's such a pleasure to get to talk to you today, Finbar, and all the projects that you're pursuing.
Pleasure to talk to you too, bud. Awesome.
I'm going to dig in just a little bit, just to break us into some of the text. I'm just going to ask you a couple of early on questions and just say,
yeah, sure.
When you were younger, how young were you when you realized, man, music, this is incredible. I could do so many things with music. How young were you?
Well, look, I think I was around 10. I was one of these kids that, well, look, I moved out from Liverpool in the UK to Australia with my parents. And, I talk like that, I was from Liverpool. And, I had this crazy name, Finbar. No one could understand it. Finbar, and I used to get teased and stuff. And I hated school. I went to a Christian school. I used to get the cane all the time just for asking questions. And, I was labeled as hyperactive. You can probably tell already just the amount of stuff I'm doing. I think that it's probably lasted my life. And, I was looked down upon. And to be honest, I just didn't gel with the world. And at 10, my dad bought me my first guitar because I saw this thing. It was like Wayne's World in the shop. I was like, I want that. And Dad got me this thing. And, I think I've mentioned it a few times on other things. My dad said to me, you've got to practice this till your fingers bleed. And I actually played it till my fingers were bleeding. And then I went, look, Dad, my fingers are bleeding. And he was like, no, that was, I didn't understand a metaphor, It's like, and I just got, it's really fascinating because as I've got older, I realized I'm not a sport person at all. I can't gel with sport. And as I'm older, I worked out that, I like to compete with myself. I don't like to compete against someone. The music was this thing I could lock myself in my room and compete against myself and work and practice and have this tenacity and be curious and explore new dimensions. And I've really tried to keep that curiosity going as I've got older, just that young mindset. So it was about 10, but it was driven out of despair by my parents to go, my son just doesn't fit anywhere,
Right. Well, so then, I was going to follow that up with, like, when was it that you decided to make this your life? But it was your life from the age of 10. I think it sounds like that's the place where you really felt you fit into the world's,
Yeah, well, it's really funny because I tell people, which freaks them out, which I actually don't mind freaking people out. But I say to them, look, I've worked hard my whole life, really, really hard to be indescribable. And people go, it freaks them out because they like to put labels on things, whether it's music, pop, rock, country. You're a composer, you're a musician, you're a scientist, you're a tech entrepreneur. I just solve problems, but I love doing it through music and through arts and through creativity. And so, my whole life my life journey has been this journey of exploration through art and through music and technology. And so, yeah, I just got into this thing called music, and it just, it's one of those stories, like a lot of stories. I think everyone calls it the hero's journey and everyone has their own. For me, it was just, I didn't have an idea of what I wanted to do. I just wanted to play guitar.
Yeah.
And it evolved into, touring in a top band in Australia on the charts, and then being endorsed by some of the best companies in the world and flying around the world demonstrating guitars for these being a clinician and teaching at school. It just evolved. All this stuff just came out of me just sitting in my room playing guitar and continuing to do that, really.
Well, that's amazing because I mean, and I'm like you in some ways, not the tech part, I wish I was, but I mean, just the fact I'm a musician, but I do so many different things, and I would be bored out of my skull if I had to punch a clock somewhere and work from 9 to 5 and do, you know, I work at night, I work in the morning, I teach, I play, I talk to people like yourself. I
Yeah.
work in theater venues. I've done musical theater. I whatever it is, I compose. And you know, it's always exciting to never know what's going to be on the other side of the phone. Who's going to be on the other side?
And like,
of the phone.
to me, that's magic. It's magic that we seem to have lost because we've built these metadata tags around our job description, and then we try and make our life our job description, which is not our life. It's not who we are. And so, you know, I think people are waking up to that in today's times. They're starting to go, especially after COVID, people are going, well, who really am I? Is this really what I want? And it's this, that to me is magical. It's like some people call it scary, but out of this being scared is where the opportunity for great change comes. And great change is often when it comes, you know it deep down. And when it does come, whilst it's scary, it's also, so you never know what's on the other side of it. So you just, if you can go with it and have the guts to stand with it, at least in my experience, I've just had this incredible life. Like it's unbelievable, my life, the things I've done. And people ask me how I do it. And I go, I actually don't know. And it's the truth.
Yeah.
It's sort of, you know, the universe brings me stuff just by doing stuff.
You're just putting yourself out to the universe and saying, you know, what do you want to do with me? And then just like you're everywhere. You've had so
Exactly.
many
Yeah.
experiences, and no two days are ever the same in your life, I'm sure.
And how cool is that, right?
I love it, and that's kind of how I live my life too. Not in the same level. I'm not traveling around the world and doing, you know, but I'm at my own level in my own part of my own corner of the world. Yeah, I love the variety of life, and it's all about music for me. It's 24/7 music for myself. Also, it's just not worldwide. It's a little more localized in the States, you know.
Also, you know, Kevin, I like that blows my mind. That is, I just love hearing that you've tapped into your own passion, your own source. And, you know, one of my things that I love is hearing people's stories that are doing that themselves, like yourself. And it's not about, you know, who's better than who and who's doing more. To me, it's like, if people can find their journey and they can wake up and do what they love with the people they love, to me, that's success. That's my version of success. So, you know, it's great hearing that. I love it.
Thank you so much. So I guess before we start discussing some of the specific projects, I kind of wanted to share one of the quotes that I heard you say in one of your interviews, or I think it was actually one of your video casts, one of your video streams. You had said, because I want people to be able to better relate with, because this is technical and it's very interesting, but it's technical. So, you know, sometimes we shut our minds down and we say, I can't understand that. You were starting to talk about logarithms and numbers and ones and zeros, and it's easy to sometimes. So I want to put this quote in people's head. You said, I'm not a scientist or a mathematician. I'm purely someone who's curious. And that's just a good starting point for people to understand, hey, you know, I may dig a little deeper than the next person is going to dig into this, but I didn't go to school to like become a mathematician or scientist. I'm not in a laboratory. I've made a laboratory because of my questions. I've built a laboratory. And that's
100%. Wow, what a great playback you've just given me there. That's phenomenal. It's so true. Like, you know, on one side, yeah, I've got like 16 patents. I've built tech companies and floated them on different stock markets. I've released albums and toured and played with some of the biggest artists in the world. And it's like, and these all badges that people go, oh, wow, that's, you know, so cool. And then when I start talking about technical stuff or music stuff, some people just go, oh, but that's just my passion coming out. And I guess everyone's got that story, but yeah, like I've tried to learn as I've got older to try and learn how to translate all this craziness in my mind into stuff that other people can understand. But yeah, you know, I try my best, and that's why I need good people like you to try and synthesize what's coming out of my mouth until it resonates. But I have worked hard a lot on trying to, you know, translate the ideas that are in my mind into stuff that actually has value through someone else's lens, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, yeah, and I see it in the different things, that your different live streams, the different things you do. You have a way of pulling people into it slowly, and then it's, you know, it's going to get a little deep possibly, but that's what it's about a little bit. You know, that's what the chemical makeup of music. But you have a way of pulling people in with a couple simple explanations and sentences, and then you dig in. So that's kind of what I wanted to do there. Just warn people, warning, we're heading into a territory of some pretty intense stuff. But if you stay with us here, if they stay with the two of us here and listen to what we're talking about, they're going to learn some fascinating things about music that they never even realized were part of the makeup. So
100%. Yeah, 100%.
Can you share maybe just a little bit more about the philosophy that you have, that music's taken you down so many interesting paths? Like you find a path, and then you could just probably get lost for days on that concept. But maybe you're working with somebody else in a different project, and they're looking to say, hey, well, where are we at with this one? But it's almost the kind of thing where you could just maybe shut yourself off to things for a while and say, man, I'm so curious about this thing. That philosophy of, hey, it's all going to be done.
Yeah. So one thing, like I realized the greatest success financially, which has allowed me to have this lifestyle, is by looking at something at a micro level and asking the questions that no one else asks. Because by asking the question no one else asks is where you get the greatest opportunity to find the cracks, which allow you to find the ways to innovate. And so I used to ask, like the 5-year-old kid, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? I remember living in Manhattan, and I'd be like, how come there's so many yellow cabs?
Right.
Or, blah, blah, blah. And I'd ask all these questions. People like, what? But they couldn't answer it. So I'd go and do my research, and I'd find out that, there's 13,160 cabs when I lived in Manhattan, and they're all yellow because it stands out from all the black cars. And then I go, okay, cool. And so by doing this, by asking these questions, and I do it all the time. It's just part of my hyperactivity, I suppose. But by asking the questions, I would see things, and I go, well, why can't people answer that question? And so the greatest financial success came from me when, in 2006, I looked at digital video, and I was working for Apple, and I was one of their product specialists on streaming back in the day before streaming was a thing.
Yeah.
And, I worked on a company, and we floated that on the London Stock Exchange. I was working in Germany with a big soccer team. I was working out of Paris, and I was doing all these big configurations of live streams. And I started asking, well, what's inside a digital video file? And no matter one person that I talked to, no one could explain it to me. Yet there was a standard for it. Long story short, and I then built a company which, worth, I don't know, 100 million bucks or whatever. It's floated on the Australian Stock Exchange. And I invented that technology because I realized that there's no video inside a digital video file. It's a series of numbers. And those numbers are like a glass that it has a wrapper, the glass, and the liquid inside. And the liquid are the video bits, and the glass is the wrapper. And I worked out a way to pull the bits out and reorganize them so I could do video editing on the fly without rendering, without making a new file. So it would mean that you, Kevin, could go, I want to see this particular sports game through these 3 players. I've only got 8 minutes, and I want only these 3 different things. And it would pull together a piece of video and play it for you in 1 second without making a new file. And so that was the end of that journey. It turned into a very big sort of outcome, but it was because I was busy being curious. Same with music. Being a composer and writer, I asked the question a while ago. I was with my business partner, Ahmed Zappa, in LA. We were sort of working through some other stuff. He was involved in my video company. And, I was interested in understanding how come guitars have frets. And then I realized about the equal temperament tuning. And again, I don't want to get people mentally blown away here. So then I realized that these frets are basically mathematical divisions of 12 notes. And then I worked out through a lot of research that those notes were designed so everything could play in tune. And then by looking at this other science of healing and medicine and ultrasound and these other things, that certain frequencies respond to the human physiology and basically create resonance with biochemistry, biochronology. Again, it's a fancy term for the different clocks going around, how often your heartbeat's happening, how often the blood's going. Long story short, realize that certain frequencies affect different people differently because their body chemistry. And then I started working out a way to change the tuning on a piece of mixed audio so each note in the musical scale in that mix could be reharmonized so it was more resonant to the human physiology. Now, it all sounds so crazy, but at the end of the day, we've come up with a process that we're now trialing with law enforcement, with military, with a whole heap of different people around human performance, where they can listen to their mix on their headphones of whatever they want, and real time we're entering the frequencies in that to actually create relaxation, engagement. And so that's my science mad professor brain. And then on the other side, I've got my musician composer brain, which then I write music taking on board these principles and concepts into how I construct music that on one level is nice and easy to listen to, on another level is challenging for guitarists and musicians who want to understand like crazy time signatures or really hard guitar parts. And on the other hand, has a whole heap of different levels of coded information hidden within it.
That's amazing. I mean, I've been watching some of the different videos to kind of understand. It seems like sometimes you've been able to simplify for people who may not be guitar virtuosos, to simplify it to a couple strings, to simplify a major solo, and someone saying, wow, you did that on 2 strings, that whole thing that I just heard, you know, and it's a neat.
Yeah, so that's a new system I just released yesterday on my YouTube channel, and I've got a free 19-page book course handout. It's basically the world's first blockchain for guitar. It's a whole new concept. And I've seen the tens of thousands of guitar instructional videos out there. I've actually recorded some with George Lynch and other bits and pieces in the past, but this is a completely new technique where you actually are retuning your top 2 strings on the guitar up a semitone, but it creates this mirrored pattern of strings where you only need to know something on 2 strings and everything gets mirrored around them. If anyone's interested, it's available for 1 week, the free download. If you subscribe to my YouTube, I'll send that to you.
That's great. That's great for people to know, because it's a way, again, it's an entry level into understanding it with a booklet like that, to understand. And I try so hard, and I try to encourage other people just to take things. I don't know if I mentioned too, I went to school to be a music teacher. So, I mean, I kind of that educational thing too. It's so easy to get lost in some of the theory of music, even just the theory. I mean, we break free from theory when we're doing things like this, but we look at it a little bit, and then we break and say, well, why did they look at it this way? And then you could break it into 1,000 pieces. And but to just be able
that's exactly right. Look, I was an instrumental major teacher younger at the Australian Institute of Music, the Conservatorium here, taught the Berkeley course. So I've got a good understanding of harmony, the theory, and the guitarists play based on patterns, and they know all their modes and major. Well, when you get into advanced melodic minor and harmonic minor modes, and you're thinking, how do I modulate key centers? All that stuff can get really complicated because you're thinking of 6-string patterns, which are really complicated. When you can make them into a 2-string pattern, which is a simple ecosystem of notes that can be then just mirrored around the fingerboard, everything becomes unlocked. It becomes so easy. So that's one of the seasons. That's episode 7 of my Raiders the Lost Art series. Each one of them, I talk about how to change frequencies in sound to create resonance with the human physiology. Another one, I talk about the magnetic frequency of planets and how I've used orbits of the planets in composing. I've got other ones where I've turned the colors of camouflage into rhythmic sequences. Other ones where I've used the DNA imprints of animal structures into coding through an Ableton push, through techno EDM sequencing. So it's this borrowing. What I typically do is I look for parallel universes. So I go, music is here.
Yeah.
How do I get inspiration? Do I sit down and go G, D, A, E, or put on a drum machine? Or do I go, how can I look at something happening in nature, biology, science, spirituality? How do I take that concept, look at that concept, and then apply it to music? And it's just that experiment. 90% of them are a waste of time, but 10% of them are amazing. And those 10% can, at least in my view, can help any composer, any artist, any musician find a unique voice, something that might really resonate with an audience.
And something that, like you have said in some of your videos, might be able to be monetized for them, where they might not have been able to monetize music and make it a career for themselves, but because of this, they could monetize it and come up with something that's, and work along the lines of something that wasn't available to them before.
Well, look, I say to people, right, name your top 3 artists and everyone has their own top 3. And I go, great. So now name me top artist that you think is groundbreaking that has done the same as everyone else. And they look at me and I go, just name one of them. Just give me one. And they go, what? What do you mean? I go, someone who broke new ground but did the same as everyone else. And they go, but that doesn't make sense. And I go, exactly. My question is a loaded question. It's more of a statement, right? So now that you know that, why don't you apply that to yourself? Right? Why don't you explore? Because you might find something like Eddie Van Halen didn't play the same as everyone else. If you're a guitarist, Malmsteen didn't, Jeff Beck didn't, none of those guys did. You could name, I'm naming guitarists, but you could name any musician, any singer, that is really unique, that has come out, that has created a name for themselves, has done so through tenacity and through having their own unique sound.
Right.
What's wrong with that?
You're not going to find someone that was successful necessarily because they copied someone else and followed the coattails, not in music.
Well,
you know.
Well, you know, there are people like, you know, that come out that sort of sound like someone else, or actually are manufactured to sound like someone else. And I would argue that a lot of music has become that. And I think that that's actually fine. I'm not criticizing that. Some people criticize it. For me, that is, if I'll give you an analogy, that's just the way my brain works, is imagine food. And we have fast food and we have restaurant food. And we know where to choose. We know which food is restaurant food and we know which food's fast food, and we can choose it, and both are good. Both serve a purpose. With music, there's so much music coming out, 30,000 songs, 40,000 now being added to Spotify every day, right? It's very, very hard for the listener without shows like yourself to be able to actually help them identify which one's fast food and which one's restaurant quality food.
Yeah.
Therefore, what happens is, because no one's going out there saying, we are not fast food music. And that's not a term that exists. I'm just doing it for this analogy for the sake of it. What they try and do is they just use these old genres of we're pop, we're crossover, we're death metal, we're whatever that is. But that puts you into the slew of 50 other million people that say that. So my term that I'm coming up with is called high depth audio instead of high res audio. And so high depth audio, what I'm trying to promote is for artists that have a deeper meaning in their music, that can explain that can actually say, on the surface it means this, but this is the depth, and this is why it's constructed. Here's the story, here's the narrative behind it, here's why we've aimed to make it different. There needs to be a new genre of music, in my view, or new metadata or new category that allows people to understand what's restaurant quality food and what's fast food, and that doesn't exist. And so it's fine for a certain audience who don't care. I would say the people that are out there listening to music that go, oh, look, you know, I can't find anything new. It's overwhelming. I haven't listened to anything new for ages. That's the audience. So, you know, when I created my new album, The Code, it's all high res. It's basically like Da Vinci Code. It has all these hidden codes, which is some of the things that I've explained about the magnetic frequencies and DNA. They're all packed in my album. And then it comes with a booklet that explains where some of the codes are. And the YouTube series shows how those codes are hidden inside the music. It's called steganography. Again, I'm not trying to blow anyone's mind here. But the principle was, if a book like the Da Vinci Code, you can read on the surface, has a story, but underneath it has all these conspiracy theories, that's what I wanted to do in a piece of music. And that's what I've done with my album. But to do that, I had to create the series that explains it. And that's what The Raiders of the Lost Art is. So for me, it's also not a journey that's too heady. You can listen to my music on my album and just go, a 60-year-old mother can listen to it and go, that sounds like nice music. You know, a youngster can listen to it and go, it's crazy guitar player, or whatever. It's more like classical. It goes through its journey. Some of the songs are 12 minutes long. They go through these journeys. It's not 3-minute 30 verse. There's no verse chorus. There's no singing on it.
Right.
So but I believe a new content genre needs to exist. And I think that, you know, every time what really helped me go, yeah, I'm going to build The Code is I went and bought a really high-end stereo system. And I went to a few different stores, and every store I went into, they had these like crazy $100,000 speakers and all this stupid stuff that I wouldn't buy. I spent less, but they played stuff from the 80s and 90s, all classical. Right. And I said, great, that's great. Can you play me something modern? And not one store could. And I go, why not? Recording's evolved. Yeah. We're all 24-bit, 96K. Well, there's nothing. And I'm thinking, wow, what an opportunity. So for all the artists listening to this who are composers, struggling to make 0.09 cents on your Spotify stream, there are people spending $20,000 on speakers that don't have content.
That's amazing. Yeah, you're right. That's just...
and so my album is aimed at them. So, you know, it's a journey in sound that has multiple levels in it.
And vision also. I mean, right? Because I mean, I did watch the trailer, and it's an audio and visual CD, DVD.
It's an audio visual experience.
You know, download. Yeah, and to watch it and listen to it.
So so my album comes in a lot of different formats. I'm really working on the engagement principles of sound. So it comes as a high-res download, just the music. It comes, which comes with a film. So I didn't want to just do music. I wanted to play a complete experience. But unlike most films who have a soundtrack, my sound has a film track. The film is the background to the music. Bit of difference already, right? And I created all of that myself. Just it's all computer graphics and library footage. Then I've created an enhanced version. So the enhanced version has the music, the film. It has the music all in stems. So all the different parts, the bass, the drums, all separated. It has the Guitar Pro, guitar tab files, MIDI files. So you can actually pull apart. So I've released the code behind the code. So you can remix it. You can go and explore. You can go into it. And the funny thing, like, well, it's not funny, but the high res, the enhanced version is about $100 US. And that's been half of my 50% of my sales. And so it's quite interesting that people want to go and explore. They want to puzzle, you know, and so it's a bit of a social experiment for me too. It's like, on one hand, it's really fascinating because I'm always looking at new tech and, look, I've written patents in blockchain and I'm looking at NFTs and how tech works and how metadata and how to control publishing through this. And, I was working with Dave Stewart from the Eurythmics on his first artist bank. And, I work with all these different people on these tech things, but, I find it really fascinating that, that there's so much content being released and there's so much lethargy to evolve the format. If you look at televisions, there's 8K, there was 3D TV, there was 4K, there's 120 hertz. In audio, yeah, there's high res. Arguably, people are going back to vinyl. So arguably you could say that it's over time, digital has gotten worse. It hasn't. The capability to make it better than vinyl is there. And stuff, people are doing it, but a lot of people are happy to have it compressed and put on some streaming platform and try and make that because they just don't know anything else.
Right.
Sorry,
yeah.
if I'm rabbiting, just tell me because
this is really fascinating because I think about that a lot too. Is that we compress sound and everything like that, so we don't get that experience. But obviously, with all the things that you're doing, there are countless ways, I'm sure, to make that digital sound just amazing. It's just you're tapping into it. Other people are content with just 90%.
Well, so it's again, I won't blow people's minds, but when people compress music, they compress it to fit it down an internet pipe. Okay. The thing is, though, that internet pipes have gotten so fast now that you don't need to compress it. You're watching streaming video, right? Yet we still compress it. And the compression of it, the way the algorithm works without getting technical, is it takes away a lot of the frequencies that the human ear can't hear. The problem with that, in the simplest term, is we feel frequencies as well as him. There's auditory and non-auditory. So everyone will know that they feel bass. They know that. They can feel the kick drum, right? The subwoofer.
Yeah.
But people also hear top order harmonics. And when you get rid of those, the sound goes very flat. The top order harmonics creates the spatial sound when sound sounds around you. We can place things in a mix. So by killing that, yeah, your ears might not pick it up, but your body senses it. So this is the stuff that's being deprived out of a lot of these compressed audio formats. And when you can go back to getting back to creating environments, especially as we get locked down more and more, or we're changing the way we communicate, for me, it becomes more and more important to look at new ways to push the realm of audio. And look, Dolby are doing it with their Atmos music now, but there's not a lot of, beside the tech companies doing it, what I'm talking about is composers, musicians. As musicians, you can have the best tech in the world, but if the people who create the content aren't evolving, right, the product is just McDonald's put on a really nice plate, right? If in that analogy, but it's guys, we're the chefs of sound as composers, and it's by taking care with our preparation and how we're constructing stuff, it's okay to be different. At least it's okay for me. Like, it's not an easy journey, but once you break through, the funny thing is everyone criticizes you when you're different. Until you break through, then everyone wants to be like you. That's
so true. So true. You've interacted with so many different people, and I think that's probably half and half of the people that you come across. Half of them are very ready to dive into the tech, and some are just maybe really good visionaries for music melodies and might say, huh? But then other people would be like, oh my gosh, let's dive in. And I would think someone like Dave Stewart, like you mentioned, visionary, I think. And
Yeah.
so he'd be like, hey, sign me up. Let's figure this out together,
Yeah. Well, that's what we were working on a project together for what a similar thing. That's when I was living in LA,
Right. I would have to think that someone like, I know that you had sat down to explain Linnaeus to Eddie and Alex Van Halen, and you grew up, wanting to be like Eddie. I read
100%.
that analyze note for note for note for note, and I'm sure you
100%.
and many other guitarists, they just idolize that sound and that technique. When you presented something like this to them, how did they was it like, oh my gosh, or was it like, how did they?
Like it was, wow, what a crazy moment. Like, I've recorded with some of my heroes, like great guitar players like George Lynch, and I've had lots of meetings with John Sykes and a whole heap of people. But with Eddie and Alex, to go to Ed's house with Alex there and Wolfie at their studio, and to be showing them a technology that I invented that applies to video, that was at that time about to launch for music, and it was back then when it protected all artist rights. It was, I won't go into the complexities, but to have sitting in their house and have this conversation with them, and they're going, wow, this is amazing. And then have Alex ring up Irving Azoff, his manager, for me to organize a meeting, right? I was sitting there sort of in disbelief that, wow, he's this guy that's totally in awe of this guy's a guitar player. And they're like in awe of what I'm building for, for the industry. But it was this synergy going on that I was just like, I just couldn't believe it. So for me, it was a really special moment. And, it was obviously very sad at its passing, but what an amazing legacy that guy left. But Alex, what an understated guy. Alex Van Halen is an awesome guy, like great energy, so helpful. And it was interesting. I didn't know anything really that much about him, except he's the drummer for Van Halen. But when I met him, what a dude. He was awesome.
So neat to be able to channel that to meet someone that you really, it was just that respect for what he had done with guitar, and then respect for the band, for Alex, and just to know you had the two brothers sitting there, and you were, like you said, presenting something that you came up with, that was neat.
It's sort of interesting because I find that with mentoring a lot of the younger people that I mentor these days, they go, that's the goal, is like I want to be with Eddie, whatever it is. I want my Rolls Royce. I've got to have my house in here. I want to have $600 million or whatever it is. And, it's quite interesting. I say to them, I've had a lot of cool, expensive things and bits and pieces. And look, I think I told you my version of success: to wake up, do the things you love with the people you love. That's just my version. But, I say to them, if you want all that stuff, I'm going to teach you how to get it. And it's so simple. You only have to do one thing. Everyone thinks it's really complicated. I love simplifying things. That's part of as much as I sound technical. And I say, you only have to do one thing. And they go, what's that? And I go, but you won't believe me, because no one believes me when I tell them. And they go, no, I'll believe you. And I go, no, you won't. I'm telling you, you're not going to believe me, because you're going to go, that's stupid. Right? And I'm going to have to explain it to you, which I will. But they go, no, tell me. And I go, okay, you ready? They go, yeah. And I go, you're not going to believe me. And they go, okay. And I go, this is coming from experience, and I've had all that stuff, right? Yeah, okay. All you have to do is every day when you meet someone, they have to leave with more than you take. And they go, what do you mean? And I go, here's the thing. If you focus on making sure everyone leaves with more than you take, they want to be around you more. They tell everyone about you more. You get more people coming to you because they want more, because everyone wants more. So if you're giving more than you take, and you're meeting the right people, and you've got a strategy around it, that's how you get successful. It's about enriching the lives of others, and then your enrichment comes from yourself. So when you're working on your craft, your music, rather than thinking about, let's get that, just keep working on it. Just keep, sure, have a North Star, but have one North Star.
Right.
And don't have 5,000 North Stars and be distracted, because the 5,000 North Stars are what's going to take you off doing the work to get you to your North Star, because your mind's full of 10,000 things. If I just meet this, I'll go down the road now. And then all of a sudden you go, I haven't done the thing I needed to do, because I'm, so busy. I'm busy being busy, But it's quite fascinating. That's my mantra for many years. I've slowed down on a bit now, but it's always been, today I wake up today I might meet someone that'll change my life. Every single person that I've met in my life that's got me to where it is because I've met someone. And just that recognition of that means that when I'm meeting someone, I'm not, oh God, I don't want to have time for this meeting, or it just keeps me an open mind and just keeps me, positive. And that energy exchange to me is super valuable.
I would think that energy exchange you talk about is something that probably made you so successful when you were traveling around for the different companies as a spokesperson and talking and doing seminars. Because I was thinking about that today when I was, just thinking about our time together and thinking, boy, someone going up to you after, you giving them all this information in a live seminar, in person, back in the day when we were doing a little more traveling and, in person. And after that seminar, someone coming up to you and telling you exactly how much what you said opened the whole horizon for them, and they leave with all that information that you gave them, and it changed the way that they looked at whatever that, if it was an instrument, if it was a program, if it was, whatever it was, software, hardware, and that you unlocked the key just through your explanation that day. And I'm sure that was very rewarding on both sides, for the consumer who walked away, for you.
Yeah, well, Kevin, so I have what I call the architecture for engagement. And so I have an actual design principle that I use when I'm talking. So I got asked to speak at Digital Music Forum East. I think it was a big music show on the East Coast. And I had to send in my PowerPoint because I'm in a row of speakers. So I said to them, I don't have a PowerPoint. And they were like, you've got to have a PowerPoint because our whole show is based on PowerPoint. So if you don't have one, the whole show falls over. So I went, okay, cool. So I sent them my PowerPoint. So I get out on stage. Now everyone's in the room, right? It's packed. And my PowerPoint comes up. It was one slide. You know what it said on my PowerPoint? You know those Wham shirts? Wake me up before you go those things. Sure. So it was 3 words. Look at him. That's all it said, right? Because I was noticing that through all these presentations I do around the world, everyone looks at the PowerPoint screen. They're like, and the speaker's talking, so they're all like this. So when my speech, I was watching everyone looked at my screen, then look back at me because it's telling them to look back at me, right? But that's awesome. It's that I always start with something really like my TED talk. The complexity of simplicity. I start with a joke. I always start something which just a little bit what, because it breaks the ice. It gets you into that zone whereby you take any ego out, a bit of fun, bit of comedy, break it down, and I've witnessed it so many times where. There was one time that the people on the East Coast listening, if they're listening to this, I was at a big major telco, American telco in Massachusetts, and I didn't know anything about Boston, and I'd come into Boston and I met with the CTO of this company, and I started talking with the Australian accent, and he goes, "Are you a Southie?" And I think, Southie, I'm from Australia, right? So I've gone, yeah, I'm a Southie, and my name's Finbar Halen, very Irish name, right? As a Southie, and everyone went quiet. Because they thought I was a South Boston gangster, right? And I'm just like, but I had no idea about that, Yeah. But then once I worked it out, but that became this icebreaker that then this pitch that I was pitching them, it all became a totally different thing. But it was just quite interesting how some of these things to derail the ego is just, I don't know. Sorry if I'm jumping off topic here.
No, the human experience, the interacting with people, it's fascinating. It's very fascinating when you meet so many different people, and it takes all kinds of people to make this world turn, and you never know who you're going to encounter, how they're going to affect your life. Like you said, all the people who have come into your path that have changed your life, and then you're doing the same for other people. You're then going out there and you're changing their life with your words and your wisdom and your inspiration. So,
well, I find it fascinating that most musicians I meet, I try and teach them about design thinking, and I think it's one of the most important things that a musician should learn. And design thinking is a thinking framework, which is around thinking about the audience backwards. So it's really about, it was a company called IDEO in America designed it around how to validate ideas. And it was about understanding the recipient. How do you hold a cup? Does it get too hot? Is it the right handle? You're thinking about that. How does someone use something? Right. And in music, the product is listening to something. So by going to asking questions like, how does your product create value? How is it unique? And it's interesting because people are just like, oh, well, this is all about me. And the problem is when it's all about you going out there, you're in a sport about actually, like, I thought about the audiophile market for my music. I realized a problem. What was the problem statement? The problem statement is all these people buying high-end music equipment don't have any content. And they're an audience that has lots of money, and they want to hear their stuff they bought in the best quality. And your product price is insignificant compared to the price they're paying. That's a pretty big problem statement. And so when you go, what's your problem statement? Oh, my problem statement is I'm not making money on a streaming platform. Okay, well, that's everyone's problem statement. But what's another, you know, and really interesting bit of, just a little bit of research can really help you find a potential market, whether it's, you know, all the rise in understanding how music affects Alzheimer's disease, how music affects, you know, human performance. I don't know. You know, there was a band in Australia, a cover band, and they were just playing little bars, and one of them had a baby, and they made music for babies, and they were called the Wiggles, and it was a fun thing. And now they've got multiple versions of the Wiggles traveling around the world. There's a, you know, I don't know how much money they're making, but they're making a lot of money, and they're having a lot of fun just traveling the world writing songs for kids. At the time, it must have seemed like a really stupid idea, but there was a market for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I mean, look what it turned into. You're right. I mean, it just, and that's the kind of thing that's so interesting, is just the no boundary approach to music. There's, and I love the concept of thinking about people who are willing to spend $20,000 for equipment, and then they have no content to play on it. Well, where's that? How's that market gonna be fulfilled? Let's write some music, you know. Let's write some music for that. Let's compose, you know. That's the kind of thing.
I would love to go to all these great old bands, you know, like Styx, Fleetwood Mac, Toto, you know, and go, guys, look, the stuff that you own, or the stuff that you have, that, you know, the record company doesn't have. What is it that you can do? What have you got? Like Ahmet, for example, he's got all the whole Zappa stuff, you know, like, right. There's so much stuff that can be potentially looked at with an audience that has a passion for a specific artist, that, oh, that's unreleased, or we don't have that, or that we didn't do that. Where it's like, I don't know, there's so many ideas out there, but it's about how do you find the market? Rather than just an idea, how do you validate the art idea and turn it into something that could set you up for an income stream where you can create the art you want to create?
Right, right. I'm going to switch gears for a quick moment, because well, first let me ask you too, how do people go about getting the code? How do they purchase that? Where do they go to purchase that? So it's not available on any streaming platform by design at the moment. Okay.
So it comes out, it's on the on Jetpack's my label in Nashville. It's on their site. So there will be a link. I can send you that link. It's, if you go to my YouTube channel, so it's youtube.com/C for channel /Finbar Halen, my name. The links are in there to my album. Also, you'll see the trailers of my album. You'll see this YouTube series. So you can actually get a whole taste of it before you even grab it. That's probably the easiest, actually, to go there.
And I highly recommend that to people that are listening, because I did that. You know, I went and checked it out. I watched the trailer to the code. I watched I started to watch a couple of the episodes of your series.
Raiders of the Lost Ark, yeah.
Yeah, very, very, very interesting. It's just, I mean, I want to, it's the kind of thing that you want to watch it a couple times to really let it soak in. And, you know, you want to watch it and take it in for what you can gather that first time. But, you know, like when you watch a movie, you never see the same thing twice. You see something new.
I'm so glad you said that. It's designed to be a multi-tenant experience. It's designed, so it's it's just designed to come back to and re-experience. Mm-hmm. It's not, oh, I've heard that. There is some of the songs in my album have 140 tracks of information in them. Wow. They have, some songs have got 3 guitars all in different tuning in the same song on top of each other. They've got harmonic and rhythmic sequences, which you can go deep with a good pair of headphones or a good pair of speakers. You close your eyes, you listen to my song, you get the veneer, you get the song. Then when you want to go deep, you start listening. The amount of stuff in these tracks, and that's what gets highlighted, just some of them on the Raiders of the Lost Ark series. It is a multi-sensory experience, and it's designed for that. There's also stuff going on with frequencies, like as the opening track of the very first part of the album. Again, I'm not going to try and go too technical, but it's using a 4 hertz differential in each ear to create this binaural beat, which is to clear your mind. So your mind, it deprocesses by overloading the stimulus in your mind, so it sets you up for the listening experience. So there's all these crazy things going on in there, but you wouldn't have any idea on the first listen. It just sounds, you just listen to it as a piece of music.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, but that's what's so neat, the metadata, what's behind it, what's behind all that you're creating. It's just, it's mind boggling to think of all that went into making something like that, and all that's going on in a recording that's been put onto a file, onto a disc or into a file, all the things that are happening, all the things that are firing off.
Well, you think about, like, I know so many people told me when I was growing up, and look, I've experienced myself, oh, if you listen to this Pink Floyd album, have you listened for this one bit? Or have you heard this in this? Or have you heard this in that? Or when I was growing up, not trying to sound like when I was a young, but when I was growing up, a lot of people would talk about these things that were, have you heard this? Have you heard this? Have you put this in reverse? Have you done this? Blah, blah, blah. I never hear that anymore, ever. That's that dialogue. I haven't heard it. Might exist, but I don't hear people going, oh, have you got that track and listen to the cowbell in that? Or have you listened to the way the guitars? And so I'm trying to bring that back, because it does exist, but I'm trying to do it on a multidisciplinary level. So it's got a mixture of science, it's got a mixture of psychoacoustics, it's got a mixture of interesting composition, and it's got a fusing of codes from nature, science, and biology, all into this veneer of music, which you can listen to, right, or you can go deep into. But going deep into it is the high depth audio experience. That's what I'm trying to create. And I'm trying to promote what I'm calling active listening, which is music has become a background playlist to our life, where we're washing the dishes and music's on, where we're working on a car and the music's on. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when you want to sit down and you want to go into a meditative state, when you want to just relax or unwind from the day, or you want to go on a journey, that's what I want to create music for, that moment in people's lives. And I want to elevate that moment in people's lives. And
that's an exciting journey to be on as the listener and as the teacher, the person who's mentoring music listeners. You're kind of a teacher of students to how to listen to music, how to go about listening to it, how to find that, how to enjoy it as more than something that's just in the background, like you said, while you're doing dishes. There's just so much to it, and
there's so much to it, but it's also it's not complicated. It's just a matter of having a good system and just closing your eyes. So it's the more complicated part is the composing on it. It's the thought process around how to write it. But what I'm trying to spearhead this for all artists, not just me. I'm just like some crazy guy doing it. But what I'm saying is, to the musicians that are listening to this, there is an active market out there. I know there are people that want this. I know there are people that are finding that are disconnected with music these days. And these people have money and they want an experience that they're not getting. So why not give it to them? But they need to know where to find it. And so, I believe people that want to get behind this, and by the way, with my series, if there are people listening to this who are doing something new and imaginative in sound, I want to interview them on my show. I want to raise to the surface people who have got ideas in sound, in listening, in new technologies. At the moment, I'm laying the bedrock for Raiders of the Lost Art, and the Lost Art is active listening and high depth audio. But I'm also wanting to highlight and showcase people who have a similar vision to me, who are looking to be different, want people to know about them.
And I think it's really exciting, because there are a lot of people in the 40 to 60, let's just say age group, let's just say 40 to 60, that are not being they're not being marketed to in the music industry anymore. They've left, and these bands that are trying to create music, there's not a platform to necessarily get that airplay anymore, unless they do something out of the box, like there's something unique. Like you said, there's got to be something they can do. I could think of a couple people, in over time. Thomas Dolby was one.
Thomas
Todd Rundgren,
legend. Todd Rundgren, legend.
Right.
So they're my heroes. So I'm honored that you even mentioned them in any name similar to my name. They're just, I read Thomas's book, and I through one of my contacts, I got to talk to him, and just via email. But it was just, there's just I love that pioneering spirit, and in a way, without trying to sound egotistical, it's like they inspire me. So I just think I'm a byproduct of people like Todd Rundgren and Thomas Dolby.
You're right in that. You're right. The three of you, and then someone else I would add to that is Howard Jones. I think has always been someone that's tried to really mix it up with. He's always interacts with his fans. He tries to, as far as like having them submit recordings, having them he does instrumental recordings. He'll do pop recordings. He'll use the that the synthesizer do so many interesting things. And so people like that, they're the people that are still, they don't have to be the flavor of the week on the radio to be successful. They've got their following, and they're set to continue to, and they're happy and content to keep doing things the way they want to. They haven't let anyone force them into that box of this is how music is in 2021.
Yeah, well, I think that's a phenomenal tagline. It's, you know, music shouldn't be in a box. It should be out of the box. And music in 2021, we should be smarter, we should be wiser than ever before. And we should realize that there is a big market that's being catered to. And you know what? I'm in that 40 to 60 age group, and I create music, and I'm this mad scientist. And I'm so overwhelmed that I don't even find music. And I know AI algorithms and all sorts of stuff. So imagine what it's like for the other person who just doesn't have all that stuff at their fingertips. It's got to be ridiculously overwhelming. So if I don't listen to music, what chance have they got to? So, you know.
I know there's one gem that you have talked about. This is one that this was a desert island disc. I don't know if you can see that. Okay, I hear it. That's maybe better. Is that coming through okay?
Oh, yeah. Steve Wilson. Yeah. No,
I know you've talked about that album. I was reading a little bit about that and saying, you know, it's written in some of the ways that you write your music, the way the semantic history of it. And yeah. I threw it on because, I mean, I've had it. I've amassed more CDs than I can listen to in a lifetime. But I found this deep in my collection. I threw it on this week, knowing I was going to talk to you, and I read that this was a big deal for you. You know, one of your favorites. Yeah. And I love it. I love the vocals. I love what's going on behind. I love the instruments, the everything. Yeah. The whole production of it, amazing.
Well, I did an album with John Otto from Limp Bizkit in LA. We were recording in Eagle Rock Studios, and I had a whole bit of people from US. I flew in from Paris to do the sessions. We turned into a band. But on our album launch party, Wes, who was in Porcupine Tree, came to the studio for the listening party, and I hadn't heard of the band then. So Wes was like, "Oh man, this is my band." So I listened to it, and I was like, "That's it," because I go insane, you know. So then I got chatting to Steve, and I met him in LA, and then when they came to Australia, I hung out with the band. But yeah, just such a phenomenal. Steve Wilson's an amazing artist, and the band too. Gavin Harrison, one of my favorite drummers of all time. They've been a big influence in my music on the Code as well. Yeah, so yeah, if you haven't checked out any of Porcupine stuff, Tree stuff, especially Fear of a Black Planet or those albums, incredible work.
Yeah, I put it on and I thought, wow, and I've got a couple more that I haven't. I have In Absentia, I have a Dead Wing. I've got a couple that I've got to put on now, and so I thank you for that. Actually, when I read that, you kind of turned me on to something, and I had it in my collection. I didn't have to go out and buy it; it was already here. I just had to pull it off a shelf and say, "Wow, I had this for how many years and I haven't listened to it."
Okay, so the way I look at that, let's look at exactly what's happened there. Right, is that trust relationship between you doing a bit of research on me, watching my videos, and then hearing a soundbite, and then going to your that is the valuable exchange. That's the link of what we need. And obviously you're a conduit to that. This is what you do, which is all credit to you. But even with what you do too, it's just that, there is these great gems out there that are sitting and there's these artists that making this stuff. And this is why I want to come up and I want to work with people to create this new format, this high depth audio format. If there was a bunch of artists, rather than prog rock or whatever title that's been used for 30 years, a new format was come up and there was enough artists that got behind it, that we could actually build a standard format like the ISO 9001, which means you've got to go through an entry criteria. But once you meet it, it means that the fans know that anything on that label is going to be of a certain quality or a certain thing that the 40 to 60 year olds, to me, that's the process that needs to happen. And that's why I'm pushing high, whatever the name is. I think that badge that sticker needs to be there because, people need to be able to go, I just trust, just like you trusted and you got that and you went, that was great. That needs to happen more and more. It used to be the guy in the record store would know John and Mary and he'd go, hey, this one's for you. And that doesn't really exist anymore. So how do we break these genres, which have been around forever, these styles, and they keep getting fragmented. So it gets even more confusing to find the music you want.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just, Finbar, I wish we had hours. I wish we had hours to talk. It's just so fascinating talking to you. And
likewise.
I want to be sensitive of your time today. I know we both have things that today in this, unfortunately wish that the parameters of time didn't lock us into an appointment. But I hope we can talk again. I really do. I hope.
I'd love it. I would love it.
And there's so many couple more pages like this of questions I would love to dig into with you someday. And if anybody could do a label like what you talked about, you know, that would be you know, a company that.
Well, you know, maybe your show and me and a bunch of others can be the first catalyst to do it. So, you know, we can.
I'd love to be on that journey. Love to be on that.
Okay.
Journey.
Well, let's think about how we can make it happen.
Well, thank you so much for your time. And like I said, I really do hope we can talk again.
I love it. Love it. Thank you guys. Take care. Have a great day.
You too.